While having a New Year's Eve dinner, my sister-in-law suddenly burst into tears. She said that she felt sorry for her mother's brother, who lived in a shabby house in the countryside, and couldn't even eat a few good dishes during the spring festival. Then look at me. Yaoyao, be kind and buy a house for your sister-in-law's brother. Didn't you start a company? We all treat our sister-in-law as drinking too much and talking nonsense. Unexpectedly, on the third day of the Chinese New Year, she asked her brother to take her mother's family to the door. He said he asked me to take them to see the house. Your money is the family's money, and the family's money is also my money. Is there anything wrong with buying a house for my brother with my money? I smiled. Is that so? Why don't you try one? On New Year's Day, our family was having New Year's Eve dinner, but my sister-in-law suddenly burst into tears. Our family doesn't know why we cried, so we couldn't breathe. After her brother coaxed her for a long time, she stopped a little. I just thought of my miserable brother. I married a good family. It's a pity that my brother still lives in a shabby house. I don't even know if I can eat a few good dishes during the spring festival. I'm really useless as a sister. That my sister-in-law's family is really not very good. When she said this, we didn't know how to comfort her. The sister-in-law said while wiping her tears, "Forget it. Today is New Year's Day. I'm an outsider. I shouldn't do this. I'm just a little homesick." While talking, she hugged my brother and cried again. My brother hugged her and comforted her. "You are from our family when you marry me. How can you be an outsider?" My parents and I awkwardly held our chopsticks and looked at the dishes on the table. We didn't eat or eat. A New Year's Eve dinner that should have been happy was cried like this, and I lost my appetite in an instant. Yaoyao, or you should be kind and buy a house for your sister-in-law's family. Didn't you start a company? Buying a house should not be a problem, right? My sister-in-law suddenly turned to me and said excitedly, "If you don't have time, give the money to your sister-in-law, and she can buy it herself, so that my brother will have a house and not live in the old house during the spring festival." I couldn't hold my chopsticks and wanted to pull them into her face, but for the sake of my brother's face, I still held back. "Sister-in-law, didn't you give you an 88W dowry when you got married? If you really want to buy it, just use that money. At the current market price, it is enough to buy a house." When the sister-in-law heard this, she suddenly got angry. She clapped her chopsticks and said angrily, "What do you mean? That's the dowry money you gave to my family. That money belongs to my mother's. How can I touch my mother's money? I told you to buy a house for my brother, and I asked you to buy it with the company's money. Why did you give my idea to my head? I just said that the richer you are, the more stingy you are, and you still want to give my family the little money. Meng Qi, are you watching your sister bully me like this? Do you all look down on me? Do you think I'm not worthy of your family? Well, I'm not worthy of your family. I'm leaving." After saying that, my sister-in-law lay in my brother's arms and cried loudly. While saying that her life was miserable, she scolded me for having no conscience. While comforting my sister-in-law, my brother stared at me and reproached me. "Why are you talking to your sister-in-law? Apologize to your sister-in-law quickly." I looked at my parents with some grievance. My father's face was dark, but he still endured it. "Yaoyao, apologize to your sister-in-law first." I know that my father didn't want to make a fuss, so he had to apologize to his sister-in-law with a wine glass. "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry. I'm young and said something wrong. Don't be angry." Maybe she felt that her father was facing her, and her sister-in-law finally stopped crying. "Then I will forgive you reluctantly, but you have to prepare in advance for what I said." I didn't say anything. My mother knocked on the table. "Okay, have a good New Year's Eve dinner, and don't be afraid of crying away the luck of the year." The sister-in-law's face turned pale. She was still a little afraid of my mother as a mother-in-law, but in the end, I repeated the matter of buying a house. I still didn't say anything, and I probably understood why she did this. 2. When my brother got married, I took it all. The dowry of 880,000 yuan, the gold wedding dress, and even the banquet are the best and highest specifications. Everyone envies that her sister-in-law has married a good mother-in-law's family, and is willing to spend so much money for her. At the wedding banquet, the smile on her sister-in-law's face never stopped. After the wedding, my sister-in-law reminded me several times. He said that his sister-in-law shouldn't stay at home for so long. I pretended not to understand and was perfunctory. On New Year's Day, my mother and sister-in-law gathered together to make dumplings. The sister-in-law asked coldly, "Yaoyao looks like she is 27. It's time to find a boyfriend." In fact, I have always had a boyfriend, but I haven't told my family. First of all, I didn't want them to know and urged me to get married. Secondly, I don't think the relationship is so stable, so I didn't make it public. My mother nodded with the stuffing. She is very busy. How can she have time to find a boyfriend? I have been starting my own business since I graduated from college. It was difficult at the beginning, and I only caught up with the traffic in the past 2 years. Therefore, I have been unable to pay attention to personal feelings over the years. When the sister-in-law heard the words, she laughed and said, Girls still have to get married early. It's hard to find when they are old. My mother didn't hear the meaning and said casually. Yaoyao started her own company. She was so busy that she didn't have time to talk. Even your wedding was handled by Yaoyao, and the dowry wedding banquet was also paid by Yaoyao. Otherwise, my father and I couldn't do it like this. The sister-in-law was obviously stunned for a moment. She turned her eyes and smiled at my mother. That's just right. I have a friend who is also single. After the spring year, I will accompany Yaoyao and the two of them will meet. After saying that, he took my arm in a very intimate way. Now that I'm married, Yaoyao is like my own sister. My sister-in-law will take care of your affairs for you. I rolled my eyes silently in my heart, pulled out my arm, and stayed away from her. My mother suddenly got an interest. She put down the stuffing bowl and looked at her sister-in-law. How old is your friend? What do you do? As soon as my sister-in-law saw the drama, she immediately approached my mother. My friend is in business. He has 2 stores at home. His income is stable, and he is honest. He is only 7 years older than Yaoyao. My mother frowned, as if she was thinking about something, and then looked at her sister-in-law with a sudden expression. What you said is not the man who got drunk at your wedding banquet, is he? As soon as my mother said that, I also remembered that a man was drunk at my brother's wedding banquet. The man's hobby is drinking, and he likes to beat his wife after drinking. He has run away 3 wives and takes care of 2 children alone. The sister-in-law's face was obviously stiff, but she soon recovered. He usually likes to drink a little wine, nothing else, and his income is also stable. Yaoyao is a tenant when she gets married. She doesn't have to do anything at home every day, and she enjoys a lot of happiness. My sister-in-law's words are like a golden nest and a silver nest. I asked her back, since the man's conditions are so good, why didn't you marry him in the first place? The sister-in-law's face changed. Aren't I married to your brother? Sister-in-law, this is all for your good. You are about to be 30. You always rely on your mother's house, and don't get married. People should gossip about you. I was speechless and choked. After listening to my sister-in-law's words, my mother sneered twice. Our family is not so poor that we don't even have a mouthful of food for our daughter. Let the outsiders say whatever they say. He and his father don't care. The sister-in-law didn't hear her mother's words, and she was still saying, Mom, people's words are scary. Besides, how can there be a daughter who doesn't marry when she is old? If it were in our family, she would have been kicked out of the house long ago. That is, you and Dad have such a good temper that Yaoyao is used to it. When I heard this, I was stunned. That my mother's face was dark, and she knocked on the stuffing bowl with a rolling pin. Are you done? Don't talk about this matter in the future. The sister-in-law obviously wanted to continue talking, but she swallowed it. Presumably, when I was making dumplings, he targeted my money. 3. After the New Year's Eve dinner, our family was watching TV in the living room, and I was watching the computer. My sister-in-law suddenly came closer and looked at my computer screen. Does my sister-in-law's company make so much profit a month? How much money do you have to earn that year? I was a little disgusted and closed the computer. Seeing this, my sister-in-law sat back next to my brother and stretched out her hand to me. The unmarried sister-in-law wants to give her sister-in-law a red envelope. In this way, the sister-in-law's marriage god can favor the sister-in-law and let the sister-in-law meet the person she loves early. Yaoyao, you started a company. You must give your sister-in-law a big red envelope, right? Sister-in-law is looking forward to it. When my parents heard the words, their faces turned dark in an instant. My father glanced at my brother, and the purpose was unclear. My brother had to come over stubbornly. Ying, my sister is not married yet. It's still a junior. It's right for us to give red envelopes. My sister-in-law glared at him. What do you know? Give your sister-in-law a red envelope. Just it is to show filial piety to Yaoyao. If Yaoyao is happy, he can find a good marriage for our sister-in-law. The more you have, the more sincere you are. I laughed angrily. It was the first time I heard someone reach out for money so righteously. According to my sister-in-law, don't you also want to give your parents a big red envelope? In this way, your parents' marriage god can also take care of you for a long time and grow old. The sister-in-law immediately frowned. How can that be the same? Your brother and I are newlyweds. My face still didn't change. Yes, sister-in-law. Don't you want to become a golden wedding? Sister-in-law, the bigger the red envelope, the more sincere it is. When my sister-in-law heard it, her face immediately changed. He said strangely, Yo, it seems that our family is still not very good at educating children. They dare to fight back against the elders. If this matter spreads out, I don't know how outsiders will laugh at our family. My father couldn't help it now. Enough. It's not the turn of outsiders to laugh at how our family educates children. The sister-in-law blushed when she was told, but she still pretended to be calm. I didn't say anything. Isn't it for Yaoyao's good? I also have a good intention. Who doesn't know good intentions, and who doesn't know bad intentions? You know what you are thinking about. My father glared at my brother and said, Why don't you take your daughter-in-law back to your room, and look for bad luck here for the spring festival. As soon as the sister-in-law heard it, she immediately dropped her mobile phone on the sofa. Good. That's how your family looks down on people, isn't it? I'm not worthy of your family. Can't I leave? When I leave, no one will find bad luck for you. After saying that, he got up and left immediately. My brother was going to chase, and my mother followed slowly. Don't leave the door at night. My brother paused for a moment, and looked at me as if asking for help. I pretended not to see it. He sighed and went out. My father waved his hand and said, "Let them go." Then he looked at me again. "Bring back and have a look if there is a suitable one." I listened and didn't say a word. Seeing this, my parents didn't ask any more questions. It was not until midnight that I heard the sound of the living room opening the door. My brother and my sister-in-law are back. The two spoke in a low voice. "Suze, are you still a man? Just like you see your family bullying me like this. Please lower your voice. What are you afraid of? I'm all for your good. Your sister can make money so much. You don't bring the company here now. When she gets married, she will take it all to someone else's house. At that time, you won't even be able to drink soup. Good auntie, it's all up to you. Come in. Let's discuss this matter in the long term. My heart is cold. It seems that my sister-in-law dares to do this to me. It's all my brother's back to support me. This is my brother, who has loved me since I was a child. He is the closest person in my world except my parents. He actually plotted with his wife. For a moment, my heart fell to the bottom. The next day was the first day of the Chinese New Year, and my sister-in-law mentioned the matter of asking me for a blind date again. My parents and I didn't make a sound. My brother was a little embarrassed. When my brother saw that the situation was not right, he immediately fought and said, "Yaoyao, your sister-in-law said so for your own good. Don't be ungrateful." I couldn't help but fight back directly. "For my own good, you still pay about my money every day. The pies falling from the sky are so easy to pick up? You still don't like the salty pie. Do you really think everyone is around you?" My sister-in-law's face turned pale when I said it. "You were originally stingy. You didn't want me to give my sister-in-law a red envelope. The richer you are, the more inhumane you are." My sister-in-law is still splashing dirty water on me. My mother couldn't listen any longer and sank her face. "Suze, it's almost done." The sister-in-law seemed to be even more angry, and immediately protected my brother. "What? You all think it's my fault, don't you? Do you dislike me for wronging Yaoyao? It was Yaoyao who did something wrong. If my daughter is so old and still doesn't get married, I will be in a hurry to be a parent. Your family will treat your daughter as a treasure, and not consider her future at all." My mother couldn't listen any longer. "What's wrong with our family being a baby lump? We are willing to spoil her. And if you have the ability, you can let your parents spoil you." When my sister-in-law heard the words, her face stiffened, and she didn't say anything. My mother continued, "What's wrong with not getting married? Is it illegal? Don't say that Yaoyao has the ability. Even if she doesn't have a job, our family is enough to support her. Unlike some people who don't have the ability to make money and worry about their sister-in-law." My sister-in-law blushed when she was told, "Who wants to spend your money? Who wants your stinky money?" After saying that, he went back to the room angrily. My brother immediately followed in. As soon as the door was closed, he heard the sound of arguing, and the sound of his sister-in-law crying. My mother was also very angry. While cleaning up the dishes and chopsticks, she chatted, "I really don't know how Ozawa likes her." I comforted, "Mom, don't be angry." My mother sighed and talked about me again. "If you say so, you still have to find a boyfriend for me quickly." My heart was beat, and I began to think about bringing my boyfriend back. Times L, that my brother and sister-in-law didn't come out for a day. The next day, the two went back to their mother's house early in the morning. After coming back, he smiled happily and kept looking at me. My eyelids jumped, and my intuition told me that something was going to happen again. Sure enough, someone knocked on my door early the next morning. It's my sister-in-law's mother's house. A big man came. He said he would come to our family to pay New Year's greetings. But before he could say a word, he proposed to see the house. My sister told me yesterday that she was going to buy a house for our family, and we were so happy that we didn't sleep all night. Well, it came early in the morning. My sister-in-law has the ability, and my sister-in-law has the ability to make money. Let me buy a house. In the future, our big man will have hope. The sister-in-law patted her chest and promised, "Don't worry, everything in this family is mine, not to mention a house. Even all the money earned by my sister-in-law must be mine. I am the hostess of this family. A group of people don't care about me and my parents at all, and take care of their own good life in the future." My parents and I laughed at each other. We have never seen such a shameless one. My mother looked at my brother. His dodging eyes were enough to show that he knew about it, that my sister-in-law's family was still immersed in fantasy, and kept urging us to go out to see the real estate. Seeing that we didn't respond, my sister-in-law frowned, glanced at me, and pretended to reprimand me. "Why don't you change your clothes? If you procrastinate and get married in the future, You will be disliked by your in-laws. This sentence is full of dignity, just like the housekeeper in the TV series. I couldn't help laughing out loud. My sister-in-law glared at me when she saw this. 5. What are you laughing at? Is what your sister-in-law said funny? I put away my smile and said lightly, it's nothing. I just think your sister-in-law is very good at acting. I think it must have been quite difficult to live before. My sister-in-law was stabbed by my words, and her face changed. She was about to have a seizure, but was interrupted by my brother. Well, don't make a fuss, Yaoyao. If your sister-in-law wants you to buy a house, you can buy a house. You are not short of money. Listening to it, I couldn't help rolling my eyes and completely fell in mind with my brother. It's true that there is a kind of master and a kind of servant. It's all a nostril-venting anger. I was half coerced out of the door by my brother, and my parents were worried and followed me. A group of people stopped in front of a building. The sales department welcomed us in. That my parents and I sat aside and watched my brother pick and choose next to them. The people in the sales office thought they had received a big order and served the big man. In the end, they chose the largest villa, and the salesperson asked whether it was in full or in installments. The sister-in-law waved her big hand. Full payment. The sales office also couldn't close their mouths with laughter, and even the sales manager came out to receive it in person. The sister-in-law's mother's family kept praising her for her ability, and the sister-in-law's expression gradually became proud. I looked at my sister-in-law's eyes and hooked the corners of my lips with a smile. When I finished signing and needed to pay, my sister-in-law sat in the distance and waved to me. Come and pay. A commanding tone is like a maid calling at home. The noise was so loud that it made others look sideways. I didn't move and drank tea leisurely with my parents. My sister-in-law called me again, but I still didn't move. My brother came over. Yaoyao, what's wrong with you? Your sister-in-law called you. My mother took the lead and opened her mouth. Your sister didn't say she wanted to buy a house for the family. My father also agreed. That is, Yaoyao's own money can't be cheaper than outsiders. My brother's face stiffened and he said, how can this be an outsider? This is my mother-in-law and my father-in-law. My mother is not happy. It turns out that you also know that it's your father-in-law and mother-in-law. If you don't know it, you think it's Yaoyao's father-in-law and mother-in-law. If you have the ability, buy it for your father-in-law and mother-in-law by yourself. We will never say anything. My brother's face turned pale when he was told. There are more and more onlookers, and my brother can't come down to the stage. As soon as my sister-in-law came here, she heard my mother's last words. He was immediately anxious and retorted. That house was agreed to be bought for my brother. My mother was not happy. When did you say you bought it for your brother? The sister-in-law was even more anxious when she heard the words, and looked at her brother. You all heard it. They just said it themselves. Her brother immediately helped. That's right. You said you would buy us a house. The daughter-in-law of my sister-in-law's younger brother also said. That's right. So many people heard it just now, but they can't admit it. My mother laughed when she heard the words. I don't remember my daughter saying that. If you don't believe it, let's adjust the surveillance. And this house was bought for your brother. That's your brother, not Yaoyao's brother, right? My sister-in-law was a general, and her face turned pale. The people in the sales office also looked at each other, and didn't know what to do for a moment. Passers-by also talked a lot. My brother stood in front of me. His face was gloomy, and he forced me to take out my bank card. I know this money is nothing to you. Leave the money first and then leave. My father couldn't help it anymore, and slapped it up. How did you and your mother teach such a beast as you who doesn't distinguish between right and wrong? Even my own sister is calculating. My brother was slapped and looked at my father in disbelievably. Dad, I'm your son. Why don't you help me help her? Is it because she can make money that you are biased? My father blushed with anger, and my mother was also very angry. 6. I didn't expect my brother to say such words. Completely chilling. I wanted to leave with my parents quickly, but my sister-in-law's family stopped me. You can't leave. You have to pay the money before you are allowed to leave. Now that my sister has married your family, she is the mistress of this family. You have to listen to her. That's right, you have to buy this house today, and you have to buy it if you don't. Who made you so rich? I was so angry that I sneered. What? I deserve it if I have money? Do I owe you money if I have money? Maybe I feel that my mother's family is here, and my sister-in-law has become full of confidence. Your money is the family's money, and the family's money is also my money. Is there anything wrong with buying a house for my brother with my money? You can go. Leave my money first. As soon as this was said, the onlookers immediately exploded. Isn't this too shameless? Calculate your sister-in-law's money to buy a house for your mother's brother. That's right. It's unheard of for me to have no ability to put the idea on my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law was not happy when she heard it. He pointed directly to the little girl's nose and scolded. Who are you? How dare you point at me? Even her brother's family came forward to surround the little girl while cursing and pushing her. Fingers reached out to the little girl's face. The little girl fell directly to the ground and cried out. It happened that the little girl's family was also at the scene, holding her sister-in-law's family, and refusing to let them go. The threatened is to either call the police or compensate. The sister-in-law wanted to try to fool her, but the other party was not stupid, so she called the police directly. Now not only my sister-in-law, but also my brother is panicking. When my sister-in-law's mother's house saw that the momentum was wrong, she was about to leave immediately, but was stopped by the security guard of the sales office. My brother was so anxious that he asked the other party how much money he wanted. The other party said that the little girl had a heart disease and wanted to go to the hospital for an examination. It costs at least 50,000 yuan. My sister-in-law stretched out her hand and pulled my brother. My brother stood still. Although my brother has worked for so many years, he hasn't saved a penny, and he also asks his family to make up for him from time to time. He wanted to lose money, but he didn't. After a while the police came. I want them to negotiate in private, implying that my brother had better lose money. It's a big deal, but if it's a big deal, it will also be administratively detained. When my sister-in-law heard that she was going to be detained, she immediately panicked. He shook my brother's hand and said that he didn't want to squat. My brother went to see his parents. His parents didn't want to talk to him and asked him to figure it out by himself. He had no choice but to look at me again. Yaoyao, this 50,000 yuan, just think of it's your loan. Do you think it's okay? I smiled and borrowed paper and pen from the sales office. This 50,000 yuan, and the money you got married before. Please make a promissory note and return it to me. My brother's eyes widened, and my sister-in-law screamed regardless. Why? You gave us the money for the wedding. I put away the paper carelessly. At the beginning, I held the wedding for my brother for the ski of my parents, but now I regret it. It's okay if you don't want to pay back. Just think that my money has been wasted, but now you can figure it out by yourself. After saying that, he took his parents to leave. My sister-in-law's family didn't follow us and tried to stop us, but was stopped by the security guard. I helped my parents withdraw from the sales office, and watched my brother's clothes being torn by his sister-in-law coldly, and my heart was calm. My brother and sister-in-law didn't come back until midnight. I don't know how they solved it, but his attitude towards me has visibly improved. I thought it was their conscience that found out, but I didn't expect that the two of them did something even more dejected. 7. On the 5th day of the Lunar New Year, my brother didn't come back to my sister-in-law's house. That in the evening, my sister-in-law called me and said that my brother drank too much and couldn't drive, and asked me to pick him up. On the way there, her boyfriend Lin called. I complained casually. He was a little uneasy when he knew it. Let a girl drive to pick up people in the middle of the night? They really dare to rest assured. It's okay if he doesn't say it. As soon as he says it, I get scared. Then what should we do? I'm halfway there. Lin thought for a while. Send me the location, and I'll take a taxi to pick you up later. The phone was hung up, and I sent the location. That I was scared all the way, afraid that something messy would come out of the roadside. It was hard to get to my sister-in-law's house, but I saw that my brother was not drunk at all. The sister-in-law and her brother-in-law pushed a man out. It's the man my sister-in-law said she would introduce to me as a boyfriend. Yaoyao, that's what I told you, Liang. You two talk alone. After saying that, my brother dragged me into the room and said to me viciously, speak to me properly. If it doesn't work today, you are the murderer who forced me to death. Only then did I know that the 50,000 yuan they borrowed from Liang that day, and Liang's condition is that I want to marry him. My brother locked me and Liang alone. I slapped on the door desperately and shouted to let me out, but my sister-in-law pulled the doorknob outside the door and refused to open the door. Either you give me your company, or you marry Liang. You can only choose one of the two. Su Yaoyao, let me tell you, if this matter doesn't work today, don't want to come out. I'm still trying to reason with them. It's against the law for you to do this. Now you can turn back when you let me out, and I won't prosecute you. My sister-in-law's younger brother is still arching fire on the side. Sister, don't listen to her. Why don't you pursue her? When the raw rice is cooked, what kind of face does she have to pursue? Hearing the sound from outside, my heart fell to the bottom. When I was about to continue to persuade, the smell of alcohol came from the tip of my nose. Looking back, Liang was pouring down a bottle of white wine in his hand. I panicked in an instant and kept clapping on the door, begging them to let me out. The door was slapped, and my brother also joined the door block. Yaoyao, I'm your brother. Can I still hurt you? Liang's family is good and rich. When he got married, he was blessed. What else are you dissatisfied with? If you give me the company, I will definitely run it well for you. At worst, I will give you dividends by the end of the year. I roared heartbreakingly and asked him if he was my own brother. Why do you want to help outsiders plan your own sister? My brother was shaken for a moment, but was yelled back by his sister-in-law. Don't you want the money anymore? I saw the shaking in my brother's eyes flash through the crack of the door. and then I clasped the door lock tightly. You dyed this heart. Either you sign today, or I will marry you tomorrow. You can choose by yourself. That I was still struggling, and Yaoyao, who was drunk behind me, had already rushed up. I resisted while crying, and I was still trying to awaken my brother's conscience. I promise you I'll sign, and I'll give you the company. As soon as the words fell, my sister-in-law opened them and handed me a contract. Sign it. I rushed out at the right time while signing, but was stopped by my brother. He personally sent me to Yaoyang's hands. Maybe he didn't succeed for a long time. Yaoyang lost his patience, and slapped me with a snap. Stinky bitch. I gave you a face, right? Do you look down on me too? How can labor and management not be as good as those men outside? I'll let you see it today. My brother and sister-in-law quickly withdrew, and they happily calculated the future of their beautiful life. I was slapped and my head was dizzy. He wanted to reach out and resist, but was hit hard by Yaoyang's head, and he lost consciousness in an instant. 8. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital, surrounded by my mother's fear of crying. Don't be afraid. Your father has called the police. Your brother, a beast, should have strangled him when he was born. I struggled to get up. It happened that my father came in from outside, followed by Linen. My mother told me that it was the police reported by Linen. You child, why don't you tell us when you have a boyfriend, which makes us worry? I'm still a little dizzy and don't explain. Linen came over and covered the quilt for me. I saw bruises on the corners of his mouth. Did you fight with my brother? He didn't say anything. My father explained it for him. Not only your brother, but also your sister-in-law's family. I was a little anxious when I heard it. So you were beaten badly? Linen clapped my hand with a smile. It's not that miserable. The police came very quickly. Then Linen followed my father around to deal with this matter. He served me in front of my saddle. My mother and father were very satisfied with his performance, and asked me to take him back after leaving the hospital to meet him formally. When I was discharged from the hospital, Yaoyang and my brother's affairs were almost dealt with. Fortunately, Linen is a lawyer, and it is easy to collect evidence. The police are the best proof. When we went in that day we saw you. Fortunately, Linen arrived on time that day, and Yaoyang was arrested by the police before he could do it. Yang's attempted rape is a definite crime. And there is also a crime of intentional injury. Your brother and your sister-in-law may be coercion accomplices. The two crimes together are enough for him to drink a pot. Linen accompanied me to the police station to make a transcript. The police told us that Yaoyang was not surprised. Starting from 5 years, my brother and sister-in-law also had at least 5 years. After coming out of the police station, I was still a little scared and hugged my mother's arm tightly. And my mother has been washing my face with tears these days, and guarding me every step of the way. My father also kept sighing. They didn't expect that his hard-earned son would do such a perverse thing. I went to see my brother with my parents. He had completely changed, and his eyes burst out with strong hatred after seeing me. It's all your fault. Didn't I treat you well enough when I was a child? Why do you hurt me like this? He still thinks that I hurt him. My father sneered. I don't have the ability to blame others for not giving it to you. How could you and your mother teach a child like you? My brother sneered, and seemed to have completely lost his mind. You and your mother have been biased since you were a child. You only like your sister. I am your son. I am the heir of this family. What is Su Yaoyao? She has always wanted to get married, and she is an outsider. My mother wiped her tears, and looked at him with hatred. After all, you are blinded by lard. Then you can go there with your wife in the future. We don't have your son anymore. Suze was stunned for a moment, desperately picking the railing and begging bitterly. I'm your child. You can't ignore me. Yaoyao, I'm your brother. I can go out if you issue a letter of understanding. Yaoyao, help me. I refused softly. You can't live by yourself. What did you say when I begged you? Suze froze in place, as if he remembered something, and the anger in his eyes was replaced by despair. 9. When I learned that I went to the court to sue them, my brother and sister-in-law panicked. Before the court, my sister-in-law and brother have been contacting me. If I can't contact my parents, they keep begging, apologizing and threatening me. I ignored them one by one, unmoved at all, and just waited for the court. And the sister-in-law's family was also taken away and summoned one by one. My sister-in-law's younger brother was also arrested for his assistance. It seems that I really want to sue them. My brother actually ran to hit the wall to commit suicide. He may not know that it takes a lot of effort to hit the wall to die. If you don't die, you will only get a concussion. My sister-in-law's mother's family blocked me in our community every day and threatened me to withdraw the lawsuit. In a simple, the year was over, so I asked my parents to go on a trip, and I went to Linen. In order to avoid going out again in the middle, I applied to the court for an early hearing. The court considered it comprehensively and approved my request. Linen is my attorney. In the court, my brother and sister-in-law, as well as my sister-in-law's brother, refused to plead guilty and argued in every way. I took out the contract that I was forced to sign at that time, And the police also took out the police record at that time. And Li Yang also claimed that all this was instructed by my sister-in-law's family and my brother. They told me that they introduced my wife to me, and they asked me to sleep with her first. They said that after sleeping people are mine. It really has nothing to do with me. Mom and Dad's eyes have been red, and they have been looking at the two people in front of them, who are still crying out for themselves. Every time he shouted that he was wronged, Dad couldn't help cursing. If it hadn't been for the police to stop me, my father would have rushed up. All the facts are in front of us, and my three brothers can't resist them even if they want to. The police put the recordings and evidence in front of them one by one, and they had no way to reproach them. In the face of all the evidence, my brother was questioned without saying a word, and my sister-in-law tried to sophistry. In the end, my brother couldn't stand the questioning of the procuratorate. He frankly said that he did it out of revenge. He coveted my company, and was blown by his sister-in-law. He was dizzy and did something wrong. Finally, in front of all the evidence, several people obediently pleaded guilty. I confess my guilt. Li Yang was sentenced to 10 years. Su Zhe and his sister-in-law, and his sister-in-law's brother, were sentenced to 5 years. When the magic hammer fell, all of our hearts also fell. After the incident, my mother kept crying. She cried not because my brother was in prison, but because she raised a white-eyed wolf with her own hands. Fortunately, you are fine. Otherwise, Mom would have regretted it. I hugged her and comforted her softly. After Su Zhe went in, I sold my old house and bought a new one. Lennon also officially met his parents. After what happened to Su Zhe, his parents were very satisfied with him, and we got married the next year. After marriage, Lennon also lived with my parents with me. After I got pregnant, I left the company to my assistant to take care of, and I raised the baby at ease. On the day my child went to kindergarten, I suddenly saw Su Zhe at the door of my house. He was depressed and squatted at the gate of the community with his sister-in-law. After seeing me and Lennon, he smiled carefully at us. Yaoyao, we inquired for a long time to know that you moved here. Lennon protected me behind me, and looked at the two people in front of him vigilantly. Su Zhe stepped back and learned from his words that they behaved well, and came back early. It took all the hard time to find me, just to go home and serve my parents. I refused their proposal. Mom and Dad, I take good care of you. I don't need you to be filial. You can go wherever you want. After saying that, swipe your card and enter the door. And they were blocked outside because they didn't have an access card. 10. After a while, Lennon and I took the child to the hospital. When I was queuing up at the window to pay, a familiar voice came from me. Hey, show me. If I don't watch it, I will really die. What are you looking at? Isn't it expensive to see a doctor? You are terminally ill and can't be cured. The doctor said it could be cured. Just have an operation, Ace, please treat me. Do you know how much the operation costs? You loser, I've been miserable by you all my life. You're going to continue to drag me down, right? If you want to cure it, it's okay. Ask your mother's family to give you money. I don't have money anyway. I turned around and saw Su Zhe and his wife. I haven't seen my sister-in-law for 3 years, and they seemed to be much older. Su Zhe was slouching. It seemed that the prison life in the past few years had completely destroyed his pride at that time. He looked up and happened to see me, and his eyes stopped. Then he lowered his head in a panic, pretending not to see me. Today's Su Zhe has long lost the spirit of that time. The sister-in-law also lost her original domineering spirit, and became an ordinary couple. I looked at the two people not far away, and my sister-in-law followed Su Zhe obediently. His body seemed to be very weak, his waist was stuck lead, and he walked very slowly. After paying the fee, I was about to leave when I heard Su Zhe shouting from the next window. I still have 100 yuan in it? How could it be gone? Was it swallowed up by you? The people inside seemed to be a little impatient. If you say no, it's no. If you have any questions, go to the consultation desk to print the flow report. If you want to make trouble, I'll ask the security guard to call the police. As soon as he heard the call, Su Zhe seemed to be a little scared. He struggled at the window for a while and left. I came back to my senses and looked at him, and suddenly felt a little boring, as if it was a waste of time. He walked to the self-service vending machine, swept a bottle of Coke, and found Lennon out of the hospital. Good and evil will eventually be rewarded. Whether it is a relationship or an evil, time will eventually prove everything.